So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night, folks. Welcome to Karate Without Belts. I'm John.
And I'm Jeremy.
Welcome, folks. Okay, so we have to address the giant burning hole affecting the United States of America. I think me and Jeremy both get behind this. The statement is that it doesn't matter what side of political aisle you're on, we're not that kind of podcast. We're not going to get into that. What's going on in recent times has been a tragedy, and it's not really something we can comment on because we're not really represented in those groups. But if you are choosing to go out and protest, don't be stupid. Please be safe. Please do not destroy property or try to go hurt people. Not worth your time, and it's nothing that training in karate should ever have taught you. So please, if you're going to go out and going to go protest, remember we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and B, remember, if you're going to do something like that, please do it peacefully.
Absolutely.
And that's as much as I think as these two, bald white suburbanite guys are going to tell you. So on nicer news, Jeremy, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Had a little bit of a mishap this week, but other than that, I torqued my back pretty good, so I've been dealing with that for the later part of last week, and then it's finally getting quite a bit better. So it's moving along. I just need to get it back to where it needs to be. So
no pun intended.
Yeah.
Have you been? How's the comma work been, or has that delayed that work?
It's delayed it a little bit, but I mean, I've been working on it this week, and it is interesting. A couple things that kind of come from it is I'm seeing how it relates back to Tanbo, how it relates to Sai, how it even relates to different weapons and stuff, and how I can enhance certain movements of different weapons and how those weapons enhance comma and stuff. So that's kind of where I've been really focusing my time, is looking at those similarities, looking at what I get from each one and where they kind of mix and kind of combine to I don't know, I mean, just really make better practicing of each one of those weapons. So,
did you happen to get a look at the video our last episode's guest Chuck Harris had posted on Kama? Posted a really interesting. I don't know what lineage this comes from. Maybe it comes from the Oriana branch, but I've never seen this kata where it was Kawa no Kama, and the way he's moving the kama, I thought there had only been so many ways to actually move a kama, but I was very surprised with how Chuck was moving those kamas.
Yeah, it was very. I mean, very nicely done. Like it was. Yeah, that's the only thing I can really say. It's very nicely done. It was, and it was interesting at the beginning of the week. I took a look at that video and I'm like, okay, maybe try this, maybe try that. And so, I wasn't, trying to take on that kata, but certain movements from there, I'm like, maybe this would work better for me. Maybe this would work a little bit different. So, and I've taken a couple things from it, and it's like, okay. So, yeah, it was very nicely done. It was, it's gives a little bit broader perspective on the weapon itself. So
yeah,
or at least for me. So it sounds like you as well. So
have you ever seen that before?
No, I've never seen that.
I'm not going to say Chuck's not going to have to ask him about this, but I don't think he's using live blades when he's doing that. All I have are live blades, so I was like, I really want to try this. But I'm gonna go to the hospital if I try to mimic these movements.
I I agree. I think if I was using lead blades, trying to do that fluidly, I would need at least a couple medical staff along with the tourniquet along with it while I was trying it. So it was very impressive.
No need to become a double amputee because of comma. What I've been doing yesterday, today, and tomorrow, Kyan Sensei of the Okinawa Kempo Kenkyukai, I think it is. In the beginning of the month, that had a thing where for everyone around the world, all the karateka around the world doing something like a kata or something, kind of at the same time to kind of rally against what's currently going on in terms of the pandemic. And it was really successful, and he got a lot of people around it, and he's kind of doing it again this weekend. So I'm just jumping in on that and trying out different things. And he was just like asking people to show kata, and now he's just like, do everything. Do Jiu Kumite, do Yakusoku Kumite, do weapons, do free sparring, do basics, do whatever. So I'm just kind of trying to put out a little bit every day and support that effort.
That's cool.
Well, I think on our topic for today, Jeremy, you had really come up with a really good idea. Would you mind kind of leading us into the theme today? Because I think this speaks to a side of things we don't like talking about, and I think it's a really good thing, to talk about things you don't like talking about, just in general, but I mean very specifically when we're talking about teaching and learning and doing martial arts. We don't like talking about failure or regrets or messing up. We don't want to own it, but I think in order to be better, we need to kind of own it. And I think you came up with this topic quite beautifully.
With I'll just lead into kind of what's happened. I mean, most people in the United States know exactly what has happened this week. A man named George Floyd. He was arrested, and during the detainment of this man, several police officers were detaining him, and one of the techniques that was being used was a knee on the neck, and there were some other pieces of it, and so the reason why is, over a period of, I've heard up to 9 minutes, the police officer had the knee on the guy's neck, and in turn ended this man's life. My heart goes out to those people. It goes out to Mr. Floyd's family, definitely. But it really has kind of given me a little bit of sense of unease this week, because that's a lockup and a technique that I've taught. So part of it is, what is my responsibility as an instructor, and when do you feel like your students are responsible enough to handle material that may be questionable?
Right. And I'm thinking, and especially in this case, this is where the theory meets the praxis, because when we talk about teaching karate, we are not talking about teaching law enforcement necessarily. We're talking about teaching average people, regular people who aren't necessarily going to be using this as a skill for their jobs. So, I think.
I'll
go ahead.
A little bit, but usually people that I've shown this technique to have been police officers, have been military police, things like that. So I don't know. I guess I've been in some ways conflicted this week about teaching it, and I've tried to remember, have I always put out there that, that, I wouldn't say disclaimer, but that responsibility of you use this as a last resort if your life is in jeopardy and until you get this person detained or, just basically, so that there's no longer, so that you're protecting yourself and your family and people around you. It's not something to just take lightly. So
right, and not everybody can be lucky enough to have Denzel Washington walk down the street and stop an altercation between two people.
Yeah,
literally happened this week, actually.
Yeah,
apparently, but I think this is something we face as instructors, and we face as people who, at the end of the day, martial arts has this element to it because it's literally what it's about. It's martial arts. We can theorize all day long about kata. We can talk all day long about culture. We can go on about language. We can talk about structures and all whatever. But at the end of the day, there are certain just basic things that you can show someone, and it can seriously ruin somebody's body, and even worse in this case, end someone's life. And I think it's this scary theoretical thing I think not a lot of us deal with on a daily basis. And I think, it's, I guess, from your perspective, how were you, introduced to techniques like this?
I mean, that was one of the things when I started. I mean, we broke down technique as, and you've heard me break this down. We broke it down into like your entry move. How do you enter into that person's space? How do you enter into what you're getting ready to do? And the second part is doing what you're going to do to combat whatever conflict you got. So, I mean, if it's strike to the neck, if it's an arm bar, if it's strike to the midsection, is it some type of nerve manipulation? Is it going to be some type of grappling hold? What is it? What's going to happen? And then the third part, or the closure part, would be the lockup, which basically you're taking them down the ground, you're going to lock them up one way or another. One of the main ones that we always did was just a simple arm bar till you had them down. I mean, there are different ways to get people to do what they were doing, whether it was like if their knees were not in the right place, you knee on their knee and they'll move.
Right.
I mean, I haven't. I mean, practicing these techniques, I haven't not seen that. And then one of them was, in an extreme situation, was knee on the neck,
which is a difficult position to even get off of. To be honest, you can, if you can get somebody on the ground in that type of position, there's reams and reams of people fighting about whether or not this can actually happen. And I like to think that we're in some way justified by, seeing this actually play out, even though in this situation it didn't need to go to the point where it did.
Well, I mean, some of the fears and things that we've talked about for years came to light this week.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, it is when you do it, it's really pretty simple. All you do is, instead of shifting your body one way, you shift another way, and bam. Instead of having it locked up on their, just on the arm straight down, like I said, you shift your body. Doesn't take but maybe a pivot and a shift, and boom, you can put your knee right on somebody's neck, and bam. It's not hard. It really isn't that much difficult than just a regular lockup.
Right.
But we did that. That was one of the things that my first instructor, Robbie, always taught us. Like, you learn to carry a technique out to the final conclusion that you want to protect yourself. And I that's how I've taught for years. You don't hope that you do one strike and hopefully that works. No, you make sure that it's dealt with the way you train, the way you want it done, so that you're protected and the people around you.
By all claims, I mean that's fair. It's fair. Yeah. It's fair to say when you're leading a type of class that teaches that, you want people to be able to understand what they're doing, know the realities of it, and understand how to get into those situations. But then you deal with the actual element of the people we're teaching. With great power comes
great responsibility. And that, like I said, that's one of the things that I've somewhat been conflicted with this week. How many students that I've taught this to, have they ever misused it? Have they ever misused other things that I've taught? And it's just a question, just a question, internally. I mean, have I regretted teaching it? No, maybe a little, but not really. But I've definitely questioned it this week.
And we've had a lot of discussions about people being prepared from a skill, knowledge, ability perspective, right?
Yeah.
Are people skilled enough to use this? Are people, are they even able to do this in any sort of an effective way?
Well, let's take another example.
Right.
Like one of the conversations in self-defense, you hear a lot is buy a firearm. Now, you can buy a firearm, but one, if you've not trained on that firearm, what good is it? Two, if your mentality is not one that understands what the final conclusion can be from using that, will you actually use it? Which goes back into skill. If you don't practice these things, is your skill level enough to be able to use these things whenever the time comes? And then you get into several other conversations such as awareness and this and that and the other thing. But I think it's definitely a valid point. If you've been shown this technique once or twice, let's say the one that we're talking about,
right.
You've only been shown it once or twice, and then you go use it, but yet you don't understand, or maybe you haven't taken somewhat of a responsibility of what the worst case scenario or the worst conclusion can actually happen from it. Do you totally understand that skill? Do you have enough responsibility to perform that skill? So
and there's like several facets to that, because it starts with responsibility. Can you trust the person you're teaching to appropriately do that kind of technique? Can you teach this type of thing in an open seminar, in an open format to kind of whoever, or do you need to decide on, who you can actually show this to? For me personally, this is why I'm kind of big. I'm not big on because we've started kind of like throwing up like karate on more like katas and stuff on the channel and stuff like that, and doing different stuff. One thing this is why I do not like technique videos, because this falls in the kind of the same similar kind of pattern, because you can show these techniques or whatever, but you're taking a bit of a risk because you're kind of putting it out there. okay, here's a deadly technique or what? Here's a chokehold. Here's this. Here's that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because yeah, I mean, if it's a basic technique, sure, it's not. And I mean, some of the things I like to show as far as technique wise, I like to show that initial entry type of technique. And it's like, look, where you go from there is your prerogative. I'm not going to say, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that, but hey, here's your entry, boom, boom, then you can move forward with whatever. So,
and that's also, I mean, in that case, it's like, if somebody's attacking you in some way, and you're showing like, all right, this is probably a good general way of getting into something. That's cool.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about the responsibility of the teacher for the students or just responsibility in general of somebody who's knowledgeable, how do we approach teaching that kind of responsibility on both a micro level of just with students and kind of a macro level in terms of organizing a school and organizing that around even organizationally, because this isn't a conversation I don't think many people are having, and I think they really need to now about how they're going about doing these things. Maybe it won't change anything, but I mean, hopefully, people will, like you and me, kind of step back and think, crap, have we really been teaching stuff like this and, left a potential door open for people to misuse it?
I think part of it comes to almost when you're teaching something to that level, I think it almost comes down to a personal relationship.
Yeah.
With teacher and student personal relationship. It can't just be, hey, Freddie over here is paying, $50, $100, $200 a month, and he's training, but you really don't know what's in their head. And I think one, you do have to have probably some mistakes made in the people that you teach. And basically, understand how trust is earned and how trust is broken between teacher and student. And going on to a different scenario, I showed early on, when I was teaching, and I was kind of hungry for students trying to build up a dojo. Hey, this is great, this, that, and the other thing. And I had a student that I was showing some things with nerve points, not necessarily nerve strikes, but just different things with it and stuff. And come to find out later on, the guy wanted to be just kind of a knucklehead, and he ended up started going to bars and doing like bar tricks and stuff, and it was like, and I found this out. Another friend of mine, he was at the bar while the guy was doing this, and yeah, that ended the teacher-student relationship right quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, it ended it so quick that within 1 week, the guy moved out of the town because I was that mad. So I wasn't going to do anything. I mean, I was livid about it, but he knew I was livid. He knew that no more instruction. And I said, if you really want one more class, I'll be more than happy to show you, but you ain't gonna like it.
Well, I mean, then that's kind of the thing where it's like you have to kind of gauge where the person's maturity is. Age doesn't necessarily equal maturity.
And also, I mean, you want to give your students a little extra so that they can build that maturity muscle as well too. So it's not, it's not just. I mean, it's also something, kind of like your kids. You want to give them a little bit more responsibility and things like that. Same way with your students. You want to give them a little bit more responsibility in how they handle things as well. So.
Well, and there has to be some room for mistakes, right? Like everyone, everyone has messed up. right? We've all done stupid things, embarrassed ourselves, or taught the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time, and it didn't go well. It didn't go over right, but especially in cases, and this is for people who are teaching and who want to teach and whatever, both past, present, and future, because we roll like Charles Dickens like that around here. You need to understand how you're teaching something and how to set the tone of you're going to practice these techniques, you're going to practice them safely, you're going to try to put as much realism in it as you can, but at the same time, when push comes to shove, and you need to use this, you need to understand, the responsibilities you take on, and that's not just, from a physical level, from a self-defense level, but from a moral level too. A lot of people will shoo that out the door really quick. And people will say, "Oh, well, people are trying to take your life. You got to move around and take theirs. It's them or you, buddy." Like, well, okay, but really, like, if that's the case and you're using karate, then you kind of need to rethink a couple things. But
well, as I've brought up a handful of times, I think one of the main attributes that benefits in karate is its overall wisdom.
Physically manifested.
You got physical, mental, spiritual. However you want to look at it, it all kind of ties together. I go back to the example where I was in a convenience store getting gas. The guy comes in, standing right next to me. He's literally starting to pull out a gun. He's getting ready to rob the store. I was within arm's length of the guy. I do believe somehow it was divine intervention or the good Lord looking after me, however you want to call it. But somehow I got the guy's attention, and he looked straight at me, and I just told him I would not do that. He put the gun up, and he left. Now, some people say, "Oh, I would have took him out. I would have done this."
Yeah, sure he would have. Sure they would have, and they would have blown the dust off their pistols and walked out the door, right?
Yeah, well, not only that, but the other part to it is, you had like almost 20 kids in this convenience store because it was right across the street from some basketball tournament that was going on. Anybody who even thinks logically is like, once something like that comes out, something that can produce a complete ending to something such as a life or things like that. You're talking about potentially having a kid hit. You have this, you have that, and don't think that didn't go through my mind to put him in a chokehold, hit him in the neck. Yeah, that went through my mind very, very quickly. But I go back to one of the lessons I learned, from Sensei Oyada. It was the best thing you can do for self-defense is to give yourself enough time to really figure out what you're going to do when you need to do it.
It's not just about reaction time.
Right.
That's an important part of it. But another thing someone similar had said to me one time in a group of guys who were like younger and he was on the older side. It was like timing's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And if you can't, and that wisdom of just like if you can't figure out what you're gonna do, and sometimes you don't have the time, but especially a situation like this, you did, or that this person did, and they chose wrong. But,
I remember speaking to a police officer about it, afterwards, and the guy said, for what it was, the guy did not totally make a threat. The guy did not have the gun completely out. He goes, you were the only one that saw him. He goes, maybe at that point, maybe you should have had the police there, this, that, and the other thing. That's beside the point. But the main point was, during that time, I'm not saying, lives were saved. Well, in some ways it was. I don't know what could have played out, but
yeah, exactly. But it's like, and we can go. we're not the people really qualified to talk about this, but it's like what goes into the reason why people do bad things. When you kind of touch that nerve a little more, you kind of figure out, like, especially in groups we've been with and stuff. I've seen other groups be like it's total brutal, lethal deadly force every time, and I'm just like, really?
Really? Yeah.
Really? Your punch should be able to kill a goat.
And then the bull that's right behind it. Yeah, right, whatever. It's...
Yeah, everyone wants to be Maso Oyama.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of mentality, I think. I think that's behind allowing this weird... we can show any technique at any time we want, and we can show... total lethal force at any time we want, to anyone we want, and just expect them to be good at it. And I think the expectation is that no one will get good at it, and ergo, it's not really a threat.
Yeah.
But in reality, you end up with situations like this.
Yeah, exactly.
If I may divert us from maybe this to kind of maybe a larger, kind of more macro version of responsibility and regret, where it kind of came from three avenues for me. Thankfully, I've never been faced with that. I can say here right now that Jeremy has been a great arbiter to me and mine in terms of being able to teach technique and being able to teach it responsibly and being able to think through that. And to Jeremy, I credit all of how I go about my knowledge to a lot of what you've taught me. But a lot of prior to that was kind of a lot of organizational mess, which specifics I will not get into. But there was a strong pull to get people to black belt. And was not really having a lot of knowledge, which was weird. I had one of the first people I had actually gotten up to black belt, who I had known very personally, who I had trained for 2 years, and they had a Shorin-ryu background, and they, were able to adapt and adjust and worked hard in their own right and really showed their own stuff. And, even though it was kind of a little too quick, I would even say, you're able to get somebody up to black belt in a year and a half to a level where, they were only kind of training on their own for a little while and had a long history with it prior in their childhood, then were able to really dedicate to themselves every day. That was a good student. Glad to say, they still train, they've had some health problems in recent years, but they've still managed to more or less keep on doing some training. To kind of a different level now, where it's more about health than necessarily self-defense. But then there's a different issue that I had to deal with, where it was more pressure to put people up for black belt. Someone who had essentially saw an opportunity to get one, who had trained with someone way, way back a long time ago. That person really, really wanted a black belt. I was pretty young at the time. I think I was in my, I want to say third year of college maybe. And this person, well older than me at that point, did not have any solid foundation. Like, maybe they had trained for a little bit a long time ago, but they didn't really seem to have a decent foundation with anything. They could not take advice, and they could not adapt very well. So this person went out of their way to talk to the head of this organization I was part of to say they wanted to test for black belt within 6 months, with not even having half the curriculum learned. Guess who they went to learn the rest of the curriculum?
You.
Yeah, and so I was kind of faced with both pressure from one side and the feel to, someone who's technically your senpai, someone who's technically your senior, to help them. And I did the very, very best I could. What limited time I had with this person, I wasn't even seeing this person every day. I was seeing them like twice a month, maybe. Then they showed up to the test and did not perform well, but they still got their black belt. They got everything they wanted. And then after this person opened their own school, never once credited me, had kind of gone over my head and just kind of proceeded to keep on going up the ranks and just kind of showing up to get another rank and not really training. And that is not only like my responsibility for putting that person to that place and saying, yes, I can do that. But also now that person has their reputation laundered through this organization, and now they're teaching techniques possibly that could be like we were talking about, and having no skill, no sense of responsibility, no sense of ownership. I know this kind of sounds like word salad in a lot of ways, and I'm sorry if I'm going on way too long. It's infuriating because it's this type of mentality that is not only denigrating karate, but it's also denigrating the responsible attitude one needs to take when they're both training and teaching martial arts.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's kind of a story I had. I know it's not necessarily relevant to the current issue, but I feel like on a macro level it speaks to it rather than kind of the particulars. But
I mean, the bottom line is it's responsibility. And you get in that situation, you've got different things working on different sides, coming at you from different areas. And as an instructor, I mean, you're trying to basically balance what the best case scenario would be. Here's the question I'll throw at you, but I mean, what did you learn from that though?
What I think I learned the most is
not so much learn from it too.
Well, I think kind of what's played out with teaching and kind of giving things to people, because I mean I was pretty young at that time. I think it was only 21, so there was a bit of advantage being taken by somebody who was probably 15 years older than I was. I forget, maybe more, but then there was also just understanding like it's okay to say no, and knowing how to say no without necessarily being, a complete jerk about it. It's okay to say no. It's okay.
Awesome.
It's okay to say, not yet, or we need more time, or you can't do this right now, or I'm not going to do this, or find someone else to do this. And I remember when I first started saying those things and pissing people off and just being like, look, this is what it is. I'm sorry that you're mad that I'm trying to take responsibility because of what we're teaching.
Yeah. And I think that goes into some issues that we do have with some people that train. They expect anything and everything.
Mind you, all of this was for free.
Yeah.
Not that I ever make a thing out of that, but all of that was for free.
Right.
So I mean, on another level, it was some guy taking advantage of a bunch of college kids.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely that's part of the issue as well. But I mean, there is a fine balance. I know I've had students that have wanted to run with things, and I've had to tell them no, and usually after about the second, pretty rude and indignant with them.
And if you don't feel they're ready, they're free to do what they want. But at the same time, they need to realize, like you were saying before, it's a personal relationship. And having that relationship established and knowing how to navigate that relationship. A friend of mine said to me today, there's a lot of selfishness going on in some places of the world right now. And I think that goes into very much that, where if you have a personal relationship with someone, especially a teacher, and especially when it comes to martial arts and stuff like that, you need to know that what you want isn't always what's best. But if your teacher doesn't understand what you're doing you have to kind of show the teacher in a positive way, in a positive light, why you want to do something. and not just say, can I do this, and then just no. Know how to seed ideas before, saying I need to do them.
I don't know if I should go into a couple examples like that as well, but I remember a couple times when I had students and, they're wanting to learn some advanced stuff and, well, no, let's work on your basics, things like that. One instance came to, it really did hamper that student-teacher relationship. That student-instructor relationship.
Right.
Because there was one time when I specifically said, no, you need to hold off. They end up going to a seminar and they learned that on the back end from someone else, it caused a rift between us to the point where, there's no longer a student-teacher relationship between us. As a matter of fact, we don't even talk to each other anymore. So, and it's not so much, it wasn't so much that, I told you so, this, that, and the other thing. It's like, you don't understand, your growth and development could have been a lot better, much more on a solid foundation if you would have just waited a little bit.
And I guess, give you back the question you asked me, what is something that you feel you took from that?
I'll be perfectly honest, I'm probably a little more cynical of people now. And probably I'm a lot more blunt. If I'm teaching somebody and I say, no, you need to wait. And if they ask again, I'll say, look, there's a door. I won't put up with it. And I don't have time to put up with it anymore. Not to say that I'm not right. I don't want to get into, maybe maybe in some ways I am a little bit wrong in that perspective. Maybe I'm a little bit set in my ways a little bit, but I can also see certain foundational things that'll help along that path of where you're wanting to go.
Yeah. That largely depends on how you set up that relationship and how that relationship's established. And that's not cookie cutter, because no person's cookie cutter. And it's, how you have a relationship with one person at, starting from one point and then getting to wherever you are now is different from how you start in a relationship with another person. And it's just, you need to kind of have the same rules, but at the same time understand who you're teaching and, where these two people, very different people, will have different levels of maturity, skill, and whatever, and you may be disappointed in completely different ways. And you may regret doing something, but for completely different reasons. I guess is one thing we can also say is that though you might regret something, it is not necessarily a failure.
Yeah, it's what you take from that situation. You may have regretted it, but do you just hang your head, oh, it's regret, or do you say, hey, okay, I regret doing this, what do I learn from it? Move on. Hey, I made a mistake. Move on.
And it's not always your mistake.
Right.
You might have thought you might have done everything right, but that person did everything wrong, and it wasn't on you. So, and I'm pretty sure I hate to bring it back to it, but it's a situation we're dealing with now. Think about the guy who taught that guy.
Yeah,
wasn't his fault.
No, could he just learn? Maybe he was in the police academy, and that's just something that they showed. They didn't discuss that because they understand what they're dealing with on a daily basis, and I get that. But and that's part of what they've got to deal with on a daily basis for things they see every day. And I get it. I totally get it.
Right. But it's, again, each situation's different, each person's different, and everything could have been done right in terms of preparing people, but still turn out completely wrong.
Yep.
But as long as you're still able to affect change, that does not mean you give up.
True.
And
absolutely.
It is important, as long as you're still there, to learn from those situations and adjust and try to make it work in a different way.
I guess the one thing that I've got, at this point is, looking at it, probably one of the main lessons that I have learned over the years, not just this, but pretty much other things that I've studied and stuff, is no matter what you do, you really cannot. The only way you can change is change yourself. You really can't change anybody else. People are going to be committed to doing what they're going to do, but through changes of yourself, other people may take upon themselves to say, hey, maybe I can change as well too. So.
And I think with that is also, having that interpersonal wisdom, which is not something I think people really talk about, is just being able to kind of understand how people are going to be, and that is not an easy thing to do by any stretch of the imagination. But if you can have that interpersonal wisdom and know how who you show things to and how you do it and how to be responsible with it, I think always to think back on it and think about what can you do better, what can you bring better to the situation. So Jeremy, what do you think you're going to be hitting this week, other than the jacuzzi?
I'll probably continue with what I've been doing. I mean, it's been kind of an interesting study. It's been an interesting internal study as well. Why do I gravitate to things? And the other thing I'm taking from that is, some things I've learned in previous leadership courses, like, work on strengths as opposed to just your weaknesses, and your weaknesses will balance itself out. And so that's kind of some of the stuff that I'm working on just through different things in practice and stuff. So I'll continue with comma, basically. So
the so hated comma. I'm trying to figure out best way to navigate my training situation, as it's getting hotter, and since where I train is on the second floor with no air conditioning, and I only have this little space air conditioner for that space, it's just gonna keep getting hotter and hotter. And so I literally just did a couple kata today, and went through a couple things, fairly decent pace, and I was like, whoa, why am I sweating this much? So it's just reacclimating to true island temperatures. So
I got you.
Cool. Well, folks, thanks so much for listening. Jeremy, thank you so much for being on with us again, and don't forget to keep on training.